All right, so hello everyone and welcome to this webinar. So I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Marianne and I'm a key account manager at Wooclap, and I'm very excited to be here with you today. So first of all, what is Wooclap? Wooclap is an online platform which allows teachers to boost students' interactions during classes and improve students' learning experience. And during this 1 hour that we're going to spend together, I will be doing my best to first explain to you what is Wooclap and how you can use it to foster student engagement in your classes. So here is our agenda for this session. So I will first give you a little bit of context about our platform and what it can bring to your teaching methods so that it can help your students learn better. And after that, I will go a bit deeper and I will show you the experience that students have when they follow a class that is complemented by Wooclap. So this is an exercise that we highly recommend to teaching staff because it can really help you to test out the scenario of your class, and it will allow you to make sure that it fits what you want to offer to your students and give you some ideas of the questions that are possible using Wooclap. After that, we're going to take a closer look at the interface on the teacher side so that you learn how to script your classes using Wooclap and to make the experience as smooth as possible for you and for the students. And after this demo, we will have an appearance by Benoit Husson from the Université Catholique of Louvain, who will tell us about his own experience with Wooclap. And then, of course, we will keep enough time at the end of the session for any questions that you might have. So the first thing to know about Wooclap is that it's a platform that has been developed with the participation of teachers and researchers in neuro-education with the goal to create a tool that fits teachers' needs, but that is also highly efficient and beneficial for the students' learning experience. So before going deeper into the tool itself, I will talk a little bit about a theoretical framework which explains the needs for a platform such as Wooclap within classrooms. So this framework was developed by researchers called Stanislas, which you probably already know, and it suggests that there are four fundamental pillars to education. So the first pillar of education is attention, meaning that in order to learn efficiently, students have to be focused, and distractions are going to hinder their learning experience. So students, they already had a lot of distractions when they were learning in class, so the smartphone, for example, but these distractions have become even stronger in the current context where students are hybrid learning, so at home and also in class, and they're surrounded by tons of distractions within their own home. So what we do with Wooclap is that we use the smartphones to let the students answer your questions, and we capitalize on these phones instead of competing with them for the students' attention. So the second pillar is the concept of active engagement, which means that students have to be involved in their own learning experience instead of only passively listening. So with Wooclap, instead of having a 2 or 3 hour long lecture where students stay passive and don't really have the opportunity or the willingness to participate, we're going to put these students in an active position to involve them more in the class by asking them questions and testing their knowledge. The third pillar consists in giving students feedback. So when they respond to questions during quizzes or exam, for example, if the students replies correctly and you tell them, the brain is going to remember more easily that they were right. And on the contrary, if the students reply incorrectly, the teacher can then re-explain the concepts so that they can better understand why the answer was wrong. Feedback should always arrive as close as possible to the moment the student gave the answer so that the process can be most effective. And that's when Wooclap comes in, as the feedback happens almost immediately, as you will see later. And finally, the last pillar is the concept of consolidation, which means that in order to learn something, the information has to be repeated several times. So that's basically what happens when we study. And we can also activate this last pillar with Wooclap using the quizzes that you can send out to your students before, during, and after your class in order to really continue the learning experience outside of the classroom and reach this objective of consolidation. So this was a little bit of background information about those four pillars of education that we can address with a platform such as Wooclap in order to make your students' learning experience more efficient. So in summary, Wooclap is a platform of interactive questions to which students can respond from their smartphones or laptops. And in addition, this platform also integrates perfectly with your existing ecosystem of learning tools such as PowerPoint, Google Slide, and Genially, but also to video conference tools such as Microsoft Teams. So this allows you to have a really smooth experience where you don't have to go from one platform to another to ask your questions and present to your class. So what I suggest now after this introduction is that I launch some Wooclap questions so that you can put yourself in the shoes of a student and test the Wooclap experience for yourself. up. So you can connect to my events by scanning this QR code that you see on the screen, or by typing the link into your smartphone or your laptop browser. So my colleague is also going to send the link in the chat, so you can also simply just click on it if you want to access it from your laptop. So what we can see is that there's no need to have a smartphone or to download an app to join an event. So the students can connect from any device that is connected to the internet. And if they don't have one, there's also the possibility to answer the questions through text message. So something that is also good to know is that you can see here at the bottom right of the screen how many people are connected. So you always know when you can move on from your question. So here I see that we have 9 people connected, and I see that we are 20 people in the session. So I will wait a little bit longer until everyone is connected. Once you've moved on from this slide, you can also always get back to it. So I will show you how you can click on the little icon that will always make the QR code appear during your presentation. So if your students had a break, for example, and you come back to class, you can always get back to the slide. So I see that we are still missing quite a bit of people, but the link is in the chat, so you can always jump on it. And I will now move on to my first question, which is a point on image question. So how are you feeling today? So you can simply click on whichever part of the question of the image feels the most accurate for you today. So what I can see also here at the bottom of my screen is that 4 out of 16 people have responded. So I also know when I can move on from my question. So here I will give you a little bit more time to point on the image, and then I will show you the results. All right, so I see that more than half of the people have responded. So what I can do is that I can either here show the results in real time. So these are the responses that you've sent me, and I can also move on to the correct answer whenever I feel like it. So when I move on to the correct answer, this will lock the question and you will not be able to respond anymore. And it will show here the correct zone. So of course here, this was a subjective question. So the entire area is green, but you can always adapt it and make different zones. So if you have more than one part of the graph that is correct, for example, you can add more green zones to it. So my next question to you is to describe your students in one word. So this is an open-ended question. And here we also have different ways to display the results. And I will give you a little bit of time to send some responses. You can also respond more than once. So just make sure to every time respond with a different word in a separate response. So I see that 3 people have already responded. Counter is going up slowly. I will give you a little bit of more time to respond. And just so you know, here is the little information point that you can click on if you want to get back to the QR code. It's as simple as that. So this one is always going to be present whenever you're asking a question. So you can always get back to the QR code. So as you can see here, you also have different ways to display the results. So we can have a result grid, for example, where you will have all of the words displayed into a grid, and you can also see how many people liked each comment. You can also show it as a list. So if you want to go through your list with your student, you can also zoom on a specific question, close it, reorganize it. You can also sort them by likes. So if you click here, the comments that have been liked the most will appear at the top. So we can now move on to the word cloud way to display it. And this is going to show the words in different ways. So it's going to keep moving until people stop answering or until I lock my question. And this is a great way to have an icebreaker with your students at the beginning of the class. For example, you could ask them, what do you remember from the previous class? Or you can also keep it for the end of the session to ask them what they thought of your class, for example. And what you can also do is when you want it to stop moving, or if you feel like students have stopped responding, you can click here on the lock. And then you won't be able to answer anymore, and it will fix the word cloud so that you can take a moment to discuss about the word cloud. And then you can always unlock it so that students can send more responses. So I see that you have lots of positive things to say about your students. So that's really nice to see. We have some fabulous, interesting, amazing, curious. So that's really nice to see all of those positive things about your students. And I will move on now to my next question, which is a poll question. And so have you already used Wooclap? So I'm going to display the results in real time here, and I will give you a little bit of time to respond. All right, so as you can see here, the results are appearing in real time. I can also decide not to show the answers in real time. So it depends if, for example, we have a multiple choice question where you have a correct question. There you might not want to have the results appearing in real time because the students who don't know the answer then will be tempted to follow the group. But you can always just go back to it however you want it. And until the last people respond, I will take a moment here to talk about this part of the graph here. So one person is confused. So as you may have noticed on your interface, you have a I'm confused button. So at the top of your phone or your laptop, you can say whether you're confused or not. So this can be useful if you want to take a moment during your class, for example, to ask your student if the concept that you've been discussing is clear. And you can also monitor it during your class and see if at one point it's a bit too high. You can just take a moment and re-explain it. And once you've done that, you can also just reset it to 0. All right, and I see that most of you have not used Wooclap, so that's great because I will be showing you exactly how to script your presentation with those kinds of questions right after that. So, oh, sorry, I will move on then to my next question, which is a brainstorming question. So which digital tools do you usually use? So here on your interface, you're going to have a box with a drop-down menu, and you can select which category you want to respond. So you have here different categories, so collaboration tools, content sharing and storage platform, etc. And you can simply select which one you want to answer to and type your text in the box and send your question. All right, so I will give you a little bit of time to send me your responses. All right, and we see that the question starts coming in slowly. So mostly presentation tools and video conference tools. All right, so now I see that I have maybe enough responses to go with. So as you can see, we are not a very big group today. We're 21 people, but imagine if you have this question with a big group of 100 students. This question type in particular might seem a little busy. It's a lot of information. So what is nice with this question type is that you can always rearrange the content however you want it, and you can also focus on single categories or single questions. So here, for example, if I want to focus on collaboration tool, I can simply mask all of the other columns and focus on this one. What I can also do is zoom on a single response. So here, for example, we have the Kahoot and Mentimeter appearing in big. And if you want to take time in your class to speak about that single question, you can always just zoom on it and close it, and then get back to the other categories like this. If you see that, for example, one response is maybe not in the right category when you discuss with your students. So for example, let's say that we could consider Google Drive also, or Dropbox also as a collaboration tool. You can also just move it to the other side, or you can always put it back. And if you have double responses, so we see that Zoom appears quite a bit here, you can also just remove the double, and so that you only keep a single one. So those you can also allow likes. So if you allow likes, you will be able to simply like each other's responses, and you can also sort it by likes. What you can also do is you can add a category on the go. So here on the far right of my categories, I can simply add, for example, extra, and it will appear immediately. So this could be useful if, for example, you're discussing with your students and you realize that, oh, actually, this category might be missing. This might be interesting to have this other category to talk about. So you can always just add it on the go. So yeah, this was for the brainstorming question, which is also quite interesting to use if you want to work in groups with your students. For example, if you have a big class and you want them to work in groups and then come back to the class and give you them their inputs, you can say, for example, okay, group 1, you can enter in this category, group 2 in this category, and then you will have all of their responses organized in different tabs. All right, so I see that someone here uses Wooclap, so that's great. And thank you very much for your participation. I will now continue with the presentation. But we do have a lot of resources that can help you script your classes with Wooclap. So we have a lot of tutorial videos on YouTube. And we also have a blog where we post lots of advice as well and feedback from our partners who have successfully deployed Wooclap within their institution. And you can also have access to our help center with frequently asked questions and a chat where you can ask your questions to your team, to our team, sorry. All right, so now I'm going to show you how Wooclap looks like on the teacher's interface so that you can better see how you can script your classes with Wooclap. So I'm now in a presentation mode and I will exit here. And this is what my event looks like. So first I will show you how it looks like when you connect to your account. You will have all of your events listed here, and you can also organize it in different folders. So here, for example, I have my presentation in my webinars folder. So I will come back to it. And then I see here all the different question types, which I mentioned earlier. So we have the multiple choice and the poll question, which I showed you during the presentation, as well as the find on image. You also have rating questions. So for example, if you want your students to rate a proposition from 1 to 5, or from different subjective propositions, you can do that here. You also have an open question. So open question and word cloud are similar questions. So this is also what I showed you earlier with the different ways to display the responses. We have a new question type here, which is a label and image. So for example, if you have an image of the human brain and you want your students to label the right part and find the correct parts, you can do this with this question type by uploading the image. We also have a find a number question type, which is from our mathematical classes, for example, and you can display the result by different ways. You can see the statistics of the responses, the most answered responses, as well as the average and things like this. We have a matching question type. So for example, if you want to match countries with capitals, this would be the question to use. Prioritization and sorting. So this could be used, for example, if you have a theoretical framework and you want your students to put the steps in the right order. Fill in the blank, which can be used for language classes. If you want your students to find the right adjective or conjugate the verb, this could be done with this question type. You can also create a slide on the go. The brainstorming question, which I already went through. And finally, we have also script concordance test and SCT judgment questions, which are a bit more specific. So I will not get into too much detail with those, but don't hesitate to ask your questions if you have any about those. And you can also add some audio and video files directly into your presentation by putting a YouTube video link, for example, or uploading a file that you have on your computer. All right, so I will create a quick question with you so that you can see just how easy it is. We're going to start with a multiple choice question. So let's say, what is the capital of Belgium, which is where Wooclap is based? So we can go with Paris and Brussels. And then you can select the right answer here on the side and save your question. Then your question is going to appear here at the bottom of your question list. So you can either just start it immediately, so you can launch the question and it will appear. Oh, sorry. Or you can also integrate it into your presentation. So to integrate questions, I see that some people are responding, so I'm going to show the result. I see that the people who did respond are right, so nice job. So you can also either launch a question immediately, or you can also integrate it into your presentation. And if you want to integrate it into your presentation, you have two different ways to do it. Either you can upload your deck into Wooclap. So this will happen here. So you can go into the settings and go to add presentation. And then you can import it from your computer, or you can simply put your Google Slides link if you use Google Slides, and your presentation will appear over here. And then you can just insert your questions over there. So you will have your slide appearing here on the left and your questions on the right. So you can slide your questions in between your slides. So imagine here you have a slide with a specific concept, And then you have a question about that concept, and you can simply just have it immediately after. And you can also just delete them. Once you're done scripting your presentation, you can save it. And then you can start it over here. So this is basically the process. So once you have finished your class, you have also different ways to interpret the results of what your students gave you. So when you still in the settings, so over here in the right, you have the results here in 3 different options. So you can just export it directly to Excel, or you can also browse through it in Wooclap. So we have here the grid, for example, which is going to give you the username of the students, their total points, and their response for each question. So this one you can also export to Excel, and this gives you the opportunity to follow your students more individually. So for example, if you have a student who is struggling a bit more, this will give you the opportunity to identify it better. So you can also have the average of your entire class here. So as you can see, we also have some people who are anonymous and some people who are not. So this is just because some of you already have Wooclap accounts and you're already logged in. So when you come into my event, you are already logged into your account. And those were the ones who do not have an account or are not connected to it. I will talk a bit more about the different ways to authenticate for your students in a moment. And another way to review the results is to go in the report section over here. So this will give you more of a helicopter view of what happened during your class. So here you have all of your questions and all of your responses into one report. So here you have all of the different responses that were submitted, and you have also here the totals and the statistics of who responded what. So this one is really more of a helicopter view, as I mentioned, and it gives you more the opportunity to see if your class in general is familiar with your concepts and has understood what you wanted to cover during your class. And you can also export this one to Excel or as a PDF. So back to authentication, which I mentioned earlier. If you want to grade your students, for example, on their participation with Wooclap, you're going to want to know who responded what. And you can do that by using the authentication here. And you have different options. So the first one is the email login, the social login, which is Facebook, Google, etc., and the SSO University login. So this one is included in our campus licenses, and it gives the student the chance to log into Wooclap with their university credentials, so they don't have to create an account. And you can also do it a bit less formally if you don't need to grade your students, but you would still like to have some sort of view of their names, for example. You can use their participant username, and here the students will be able to choose their own username to log into your event. The I'm confused button, which I mentioned earlier, it's not necessary to use it. So if you don't need to use it, you can also deactivate it here. And same for the competition mode. So the competition mode, it's a little trophy icon that will appear in your presentation mode. I will show you over here. And it just shows you the top players. So here, Charlotte was the top player. So congratulations, Charlotte. But you can show the top 5, the top 10, or the top 20 over here. So this one you can also choose to deactivate it or activate it, however you prefer. If you want to collaborate with your colleagues, so to create content together, you also have different ways to do that. So the first one is to share events with your colleagues. You can use this function. So if you share this event with someone else, you can give them the code, and then they will be able to import your event and make a copy. So if you want to create a question bank folder, for example, with lots of different questions, you would be able to share it with your colleagues and they would have this copy into their Wooclap. So when you leave the settings here, you can go to your events and import the event over here using the code that your colleague gave you, and it will then create a copy of that event. A different way to collaborate is also to work on the same event together, which you can also do here in more settings. And you can add a collaborator. So this is still in beta version, however, but it will come soon. All right. So I've talked mostly about the votes tab. So as you may have noticed, we have 3 different tabs over here at the top. So the vote tab was what I just presented, but we also have here a message tab. So you might have noticed also during my presentation in your phone, you can see that there's a little chat icon at the bottom. So if you wanted to send me a question through Wooclap, you could also do it in that way. So it gets a bit complicated if you're using Wooclap for online classes, for example, because then you might have another chat. So if you use Google Meet, for example, you will have the Google Meet chat or the Zoom chat and the Wooclap chat. So there you might want to deactivate it so that you don't have different platforms. But if you're presenting on face-to-face classes, this can be interesting because you will have the responses coming in. And if you have a really big group and students might not be all able to ask their questions, or they might be a bit too far or too shy to participate, it gives them the opportunity to send their questions directly to you. And you can also review them and respond it yourself, or you can also just display it over your screen. So that is entirely up to you. And the last tab over here is the participant page, where you can put questionnaires or files. So here you can share your slides with your participant, for example, or you can create questionnaires, which is here exactly the same interface as the votes tab, but your students are going to be able to respond to this questionnaire anytime they want in an asynchronous mode. So the questionnaire will be available when you use the link, for example, that is in the chat, and they can always access it as long as you have published it. All right, so let me get back to my presentation. Oh, sorry. All right. So in case this demo made you want to try out the platform, we do organize free pilot trials for higher education institutions, which last for a full semester. So this gives you the opportunity to fully assess whether Wooclap reaches your expectations before making a decision. So during the pilot, higher education institutions are accompanied every step of the way by a dedicated account manager who will guide you through the deployment process and trains the entire teaching staff at the start of the pilot with a webinar such as this one. And you also receive unlimited access to the platform for as many professors as is necessary. And you will also have a global view on the usage data throughout the pilot. So at the end of the pilot, you're then equipped with all the information that you need to make a decision as to what type of license you'd like to purchase and based on the user metrics and feedback from your staff. So in case you're interested in starting a pilot at your institution for the next semester, don't hesitate to reach out to us so that we can discuss it together. So this marks the end of the demo part of this webinar. So I will now leave the floor to Benoit Husson, who will tell you a bit more about his own experience with Wooclap and how he uses the platform to engage with students. So Benoit, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. I am Benoit Husson from the Université Catholique of Louvain in Belgium, and I am professor at the School of Engineering. I'm basically teaching mechanics and machine design, which are two technical fields. I want to show you some examples I use in my teaching, and in fact, I will try to show you three different examples. The first example is I try to go further, but okay. This is at the very beginning of the course. It means it's the first week, and I try to introduce some new concepts which are now evident for the students. And for example, I give this picture. It's an airplane, and you see the two wings are blowing up. And I just ask a very short question: what are the causes of this tragedy? And after that, they go on Wooclap, and that's what the answer I received from the student. It might be a maintenance problem, wrong material selection, chain reaction starting block from lit of engineering problem, human error, loose screws, right material selection, meteorological issue, the plane was overloaded, engine blow up. And so none of this answer were correct. In fact, because it's impossible for them to know the correct answer. But it's interesting to look what they just answered, because, well, is it a meteorological problem? In fact, no. And I show them the full video. You see, this is an airplane. Amateur video showing the wings fall off the C-130 tanker plane just before. Okay, you recognize it's a firefighting airplane, and what is very strange is that the two wings blow up when the fly releases the water. this is not what the common sense would tell. Usually, things broke down when you overload it, when you go over a maximum load. And in fact, in the case of this airplane, the problem appeared when the water was going on. So you decrease the load on the wing. And in fact, then we made a lot of discussion about that, and we make to the introduction of the fatigue effect, which is a technical aspect of my teaching, but it is made able to introduce this concept. So this is one example to introduce new concept. Another example is a more common one. Well, I use what is called peer teaching, or sometimes also called a Mazur approach. This means that I try to find a question, and I'm looking for a specific kind of question that at least half of the student or third have another answer than the other. This means that the idea is basically to have people will try to debate because they do not have the same answer. And that's quite interesting. So I will give you an example. In this case, I take also a video, but it's a case of a small card. You will see I will see just the first part of the video. So people are building a small card. They will put the potatoes and a spring on it. Okay, so you see the spring. You will put the potato on the right of it, and then it will try to cut the small tile who blew up the spring. Okay, so you will see it will start to cut it in a few minutes. Okay, and the question, what is going to happen? Some times ago, I do it just using blue paper color, green paper and red paper, and just ask a very simple question. What will be the speed of the potatoes and the cards? And we have to answer. The potato will go faster than the cards, and all the cards will go faster than the potatoes. Okay, and with such kind of question, usually you have nearly any kind of answer, but about for 40 people, 40% answer the green one, and the rest the red one, and 1 year later it's the reverse. So there is no clear answer for this question. Then I show the second part of the video, and you see that the potatoes go faster than the cards. In fact, it's a very simple description of what is called the conservation of momentum. And in order to do that, after the video, I just ask them to debate why the potato is going faster than the card. In fact, it's only a question of the weight of the potato and the weight of the cards. So what is important in this process is that after the first question, the students are working in small group, typically 4, because in classroom it's always easier for me to put them in group of 4, and they have to debate why does the potato go faster than the cards. Okay, so then, and the third example, it's an example if my lecture on machine design, I give them drawings, it's a technical drawings, and I'm just asking them what element the figure 8 represents. And so I give 5 different possibilities, and as you see in this case, about 64% said that it was a seal, and 32 that it was a circle. In fact, the right answer is it's a seal. So it's interesting for them to know if they have the correct answer or not. And for me, as a teacher, I say that about a third of the students have the wrong answer. So this means that maybe I have to explain again the difference between a circle and a seal, which are technical aspect, but it's interesting for me to see if 90% of the students have the right answers, it means, okay, that's it. I'm not going to go any further. But if there are less than 50%, it means that I need to give some more explanation or try to make a debate among them. So that was 3 examples of what I do in my teaching. Maybe you have a question or you want to show something more in details. I'm listening to your question.
All right, thank you very much, Benoit. I see that there's already 2 questions in the chat from Begonia. So where do you click to lock the answers? So I will just, I will get back to my screen and show you for the lock. So when I go back into my questions, the lock was right over here. And we also have a second.
It's very difficult to hear you. There's a technical problem in the connection.
Yes, I might. Sorry. I will switch my Wi-Fi. Maybe it works better. 1 second. Oh. Can you hear me better now? Oh. Okay, so Charlotte says that she can still hear me, so I will just continue. If you really cannot hear me, feel free to say something in the chat. So as I was saying, the lock is over here at the bottom, so you have the little trophy and the lock. So the second question from Begonia was whether it's possible to copy an event so that you can address it to different groups of students. And yes, you can do that when you go here into your list of events. Oops. And for example, if I want to duplicate this event, I can simply go here on the 3 dots next to my event and duplicate it. And so here I will have a copy and I can just modify the code and make a different title, but it will be the exact same event with the same questions. And I see we have another question from Jose. So how do we integrate Wooclap into various platforms? So we have different integrations with Wooclap. So we have the integration with PowerPoint, which I mentioned, for example. And there it's more of an add-in. So you will, instead of having your presentation deck uploaded into Wooclap, you will first ask your so prepare your question into the Wooclap platform. And then when you're into your PowerPoint, you can install an add-in. And you would be able to pull the questions from Wooclap and integrate it inside of PowerPoint. Okay, so I see that Benoit has lost internet connection, so I hope he will be back soon. If you have questions for him, maybe send them in the chat and we will get back to that later. And if you have any other questions for me, I think there was no other at the moment, but we still have some time together, so don't hesitate. All right, so I see that there's no more questions, so I will just talk a little bit more about the other integrations that that we have, because we still have 6 minutes together. So I did mention the PowerPoint integration, but we also do integrate with Microsoft Teams, for example. So if you use Teams during your classes, you can also have Wooclap directly integrated into Teams so that you don't have to switch from platforms or share your screen. So this is another integration that we have that I encourage you to look into if you use Teams. And this goes the same for Zoom. So we also have that integration going with Zoom. And if you go for a campus license, you also have the SSO integration, which I mentioned, but also the LMS integration. So if you use Moodle, for example, or Canvas, so any NTI LMS, for example, you would be able to synchronize the Wooclap grades into your LMS, and you will have those grades over there. And you can also create Wooclap events directly from your LMS. So this also gives you a more, a more smooth experience so that you don't have a ton of different platforms. And Wooclap is really just of a little integration into your everyday tools. So if this is something that you're interested in, don't hesitate to contact us and we can also discuss that together. And if you have any questions left, as Charlotte said, feel free to send them in the chat and I will answer them. All right, so it looks like we have no more questions, so I guess we can end here. So thank you everyone for your participation. It was great to interact with all of you and to have your feedback on your students in this beautiful word cloud. So don't hesitate to reach out to us if you have any more questions. And thank you very much. Thank you to everyone who's writing in the chat.